So it is a course of study in audio production. You are our cloud-based DAW solution because the way that I keep this equitable is to have all of my students learn how to use this on their Chromebooks, for which they all have one. This becomes the equity answer, make that operate. It works brilliantly. I sought you guys out. I really needed something that was compatible with my school's network, which is what we call a walled garden, a fairly safe environment to do this work in. Something that was relatively standalone, that didn't require a whole lot of training to get into it. And this allowed you to very, very quickly plug in and just make things work. They got a pretty good product out of it out of the gate. The ability to plug right into our LMS made things really, really easy for me as an instructor because I wasn't having to do individual installs or individual invites or try to coach their guest station. When I was presented with a classroom that was full of old desks and chairs and said, your kids have Chromebooks and we don't really have a budget for textbooks, so figure it out. I went on a mission in about 2 weeks and found your product. Soundtrap and my career began at the same time. I've now taken it to the history department. I've now taken it to social studies. My students are now basically turning in their midterms as podcasts and then using the transcription tool to create a text version of that in your platform. It's been fantastic. Once we started it and once it proved itself to be reliable, we never looked back. In terms of my students' content, I had 2 young ladies do a podcast episode about the time they almost got arrested in Walmart for shoplifting. And it was 2 parts. There was a part 1 where it got the rated G version, and there was a part 2 when I had the other one that they were working with. And what they did is they recorded it in batches on different computers, but sharing the file set. And it was really the first time that we used the collaborative tools externally. As in, I had somebody that was not in one of my regular classes that I invited into another club class that I had created. And that allowed them to do their recording at different times and react to what it is that they were hearing. It's not a story I can share with their parents to this day. I was explaining to my fellow instructors this morning that in addition to the podcasting things, that my class is one that their students will skip to. Your friends ditch their other classes to come here, make a podcast, participate in the things that we are doing as part of our conversations. So the way I've structured it with them is that everybody gets one for free, no questions asked. The second time they want to come back, I ask them to get permission from the instructors. And they generally will grant that once we get there. But I make a fairly low bar in that I'd much rather have them here in my class exploring what is capable in their brains than walking to 7-Eleven or out going to Taco Bell or Popeyes, because those are steps in the wrong direction. I think I and another class, Auto Shop, are neck and neck with who has the best attendance. And I say like, hey, the process we're going to go through to build your podcast, when you get done with it, looks a lot like the process you're going to go through when you build an essay, okay? But you're going to use your pencil rather than your words. So now that you've done this, that lowers that bar. I can send them back to their English 10 class and they're no longer out of context with what's going on. Some of our students, that, especially coming out of the pandemic, came in with some pretty significant deficits in terms of reading or being able to write things at grade level. And this changed the delivery mechanism enough to the point where we could tap into the portion of their brain that we knew that was fully functional, that didn't give them the ability to express themselves. That bar of having to write something out on a piece of paper or type it into your Chromebook, in many cases, was much higher for where they were cognitively. And this gives them the ability to do those things much more top of mind and much more something that they were familiar with, and then transition into the point where it's not really all that different to do it. Once you learn these skills, that has become a big part of the motivator to learn on your literacy, work on your vocabulary, and the rest of the things that come with that. We may well be the only functional adults in our kids' lives. So having a tool like this where they can express themselves, no holds barred, say whatever they want as a part of it has opened up that dialogue so we can build the kind of trust and potentially get them some of the help that they need or provide them with the resources that they're going to need in order to be able to move their ball forward. One of the most coveted projects in my entire program is I send two people down with a little rolling table to the front of the school, and they interview the students that show up late. They put together a little bit of a script, 3 or 4 questions. How'd you get to school? How far did you come? What'd you eat for breakfast this morning? Like that. And then they hit them with question number 4, which is, so why are you late? That has become a great deal of insight for the institution, for me, for the rest of it. It has become a project for some of my advanced students to help craft those documents into a narrative of why do people show up late for school. It's incredibly efficient from a dollar perspective. So we are in a budget constrained environment, education always is, and for a relatively low cost with technology that they already have, we can capture something that is totally unique, that is professional caliber for a couple $100 other than a couple $1,000. It's hard to fake your voice. It's not that you can't do it. I've had some students who were not comfortable with their own voices view some of the AI tools as a way to get their point across. The effort they need to go through, the workflow, the process, how to name the files, all of the other things that are in there that become like a project management class almost as a way to work this into their game plan is showing learning in a completely different way. Podcasting for us is a two-piece thing. I have a Google slide deck that I give them that has a series of prompts in it, questions, things you need to do, things that are requirement. In there is a rubric. I've got about maybe 16 or 20 different points of things that I'm expecting to hear in there. Musical transitions, introductions, announcing yourself, things like that. Those are what I want to call the must-dos. It evolves to the point where, okay, you're going to now have your first topic. So you owe me, as part of your first topic, basically an introduction to what your topic is, some information on what it is that you're trying to do. If you're going to use an expert, you need to cite your source as to where that is. And that builds out 2 or 3 times the musical transitions and things like that to the point where I have a pretty robust document that comes alongside the podcast. If my kids are working on a 10-minute podcast, I ride my bike back and forth to school most days. So what I do is I load their podcasts up as MP3 files in one of these. Okay. I sort these by student ID number and I listen to them on the way back and forth to school. So they grade themselves. It's given them their voice. Right. I walked into this with my kids coming off of pandemic quarantine for a year and a half. And for my 14 and 15-year-olds, they didn't know how to talk to each other. And this gave them that tool set back so that they could normalize the relationships back and forth between them as they were sharing this information and this content.